Hey, this is Michael Emery. Thanks for tuning into the Slow Baja. This podcast is powered by Tequila Fortaleza, handmade in small batches, and hands down, my favorite tequila. Hey, do you have a four-wheel drive? Did you always want to see Baja racing up close and personal? You need to join Slow Baja in the Nora Mexican 1000, April 23rd through 30th. The Safari class is your way to get your street-legal four-wheel drive vehicle up close and into the action. You got to check out the Safari class at nora.com. That's www.norra.com. Miguel, let me just hear you say your name so then I can say it properly.
Miguel Ángel Martínez de la Cueva. Martínez de la Cueva is my father's last name. Gravioto, which is my mother's last name. And I just shorten it to Miguel Ángel de la Cueva, which is, everybody knows me by that name, Miguel Ángel de la Cueva.
All right, well, let's get a drink in hand and say hello and cheers.
Salud. Salud. Salud.
Teodoro. Bien, bien. Miguel Ángel de la Cueva.
Perfecto.
Hey, I'm delighted to be here in La Paz at Harker. We're at Harker Bar and Surf Shop, and it's a little noisy, but we're going to have a nice conversation with my Instagram friend, Miguel, who's a brilliant photographer. And if you're not following him yet, you should be by the time this podcast is over. So, Miguel, we were talking a little bit on the drive over here in your great old Land Rover. You're originally from Cuernavaca, and you came to La Paz in what year?
I arrived in La Paz in 1994. I live since 1994 in La Paz. I was here earlier. I have a relative which used to spend half a year, and I used to come here when I was a child. But since 1994, I've been living continuously here, and I'm not planning to leave soon.
And the reason we're talking is you're a photographer, and a damn fine photographer. I've seen mainly your landscape photographs, but you also photograph people, correct?
Yes.
Did photography bring you here? Was that why you came, or was there some other reason?
Oh, well, actually, before I arrived here, I was studying visual arts, but honestly, I had no idea what I was going to do with it. So at that time, my girlfriend and I were just planning to move somewhere, and I told her a lot about La Paz in the 80s, where I used to be here with my family, and she just fell in love with the idea. And then one day she, before I even noticed, I was in La Paz. Well, that's how powerful it was.
That's how it works.
How it works.
With a girlfriend, you're going to follow her anywhere.
Exactly. I just remember once I told her about La Paz, and the next thing I remember, I was in La Paz already with her. So I didn't do photography by then, because when I arrived in 1994, it was very different from what you're looking at right now. La Paz, 1994, was very small place, only 2 coffee shops. Socially, it was a very small. Social circle was very small. We had no idea what we'll be doing, what things we'll be doing here as a job, you know. And actually, my girlfriend was a fashion designer, and then actually she got job way faster than I did. So she started designing clothing, and I just helped her for a while. For the next 2 years, I was working with my girlfriend on which became my wife, in designing clothes. And I didn't see any window by then into photography until I applied for a grant it's called the National Council for the Arts, and I applied for a grant to document all the ceremonies that were left behind the Jesuit missions, the pagan and non-pagan celebrations. And I was very lucky that I got the grant. So that grant allowed me to travel for 1 year in a very modest way, of course, because those grants are very modest, but it gave me at least a backup to do some traveling into, like, to go within, toward the place. And then when I was traveling and doing this, although I was documenting more anthropological approach, I was overwhelmed by the landscape. The more I start going deep into these mountain ranges, I just fell in love with these ranges and with all the things that you normally don't see from the road. Because the road is beautiful. It's one of my favorites roads to drive, the Peninsular Highway. And it's overwhelming, but there's so much beauty behind those mountains. So I just fell in love, and I just keep trying. When that grant ended, I was very hooked into the landscape, and one day I pull over and I got on top of this little mountain, and I was very lucky to see the sunrise, on Sierra La Giganta range in Loreto. You've been there,
I've seen it.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But it was 6:30 a.m. and it was just blood red, just sinking into the Sea of Cortez. And I was so overwhelmed by that vision that it just changed. I mean, it's just something hooked. And since then, I just wanted to return and see what was behind those volcanic walls. And it's been 20 years, of exploring. And it's funny because I live in a peninsula that is surrounded by water, and overwhelming, beautiful coastline. But 80% of my time I've spent it in the deserts and in the mountain ranges.
You've got your back turned to the beautiful water that everybody comes to see,
yeah.
And you're up in the mountains, and you're in the desert, and you're seeing the cactus.
Yeah, I remember this quote from a friend, Bruce Berger, who is a friend, and he's an author of one of the books, which I promise I will deliver before you leave. And he has this beautiful quote saying that, the desert sunsets you just have to look in the opposite direction. And that's about the desert.
Yeah.
Some of the most beautiful things happen on the other direction. And I'm a desert lover. I just love the aridity, and of course I love the coastline. I try to be as much as I can from the water and go to the beach once a day. But my heart, it's in the mountain ranges. And
just hang on for a second.
Yes.
There. Back up, and let's talk about your childhood, your teenage days. You're a young adult in college studying visual arts. Where did photography fit into your life? Who did you? I mean, Mexico has a great tradition of photographers, Bravo and Graciela Iturbide.
Yes.
Tino Modati, who's not Mexican, but came to Mexico and made fantastic photographs. Edward Weston. You had a moment in history where some of the greatest photography was happening in Mexico. Mm-hmm. So for you, Juan Rulfo, you, where did photography fit? Who were your heroes? When did you get your first camera? Just walk me through that.
It's interesting because my father was a painter, And although I never lived with him, I spent some time with him. He taught me how to paint. He taught me how to see somehow, and the structure behind the image, and as a painter. And I let's say my first approach into visual arts was through him, through my father, as a painter. And I spent some of my childhood drawing, not as much as into something, honestly, I loved, but I did draw a lot. But if there was one thing I do remember and I do know, is that my best childhood memories, they were spent over with my mother outside. When we were camping, I was always lost, and by the time I got back, everybody was crying because they thought I was lost. They were on their knees. They're like, oh my God, And those are my happiest childhood memories. And I think, although I lost this sense of, nature during my teenager years, because I was into motorcycles and other stuff, not really into nature. Let's say it remained hidden. And also the experience with my father and my attraction to visual arts, because I always felt very attracted to visual, although I didn't recognize it as that. But it's very interesting that you mention it, because when I was sitting on top of that mountain, looking at that volcanic wall, just bright, getting lit by the sun, and just something moved so strong that I think these things reconnected again, because I was connected again with this nature, the sense of wonder of nature, like being overwhelmed and lost, which I loved when I was a child, and also somehow maybe this need to be part of it, or, sometimes you just don't see things as clearly. You just know you somehow belong. There's something there for you, although you don't really have a name for it. What I do know is that these two of the most important memories of my life, which was spending this time I had with my father as a painter, which I, and along with my mother in the woods, reconnected. And after years, 10 years or more that they were lost, hidden, being teenager and leaving home and trying to find a place, search for life. And since then, I have done nothing to return to this place where I was looked at sitting on top of that mountain. And it has transformed in many ways, because first I think it rescued me. It gave me a direction which I didn't have. For the first time in my life, I knew what I wanted. Clearly, it's like not with a name, but I knew I needed to be there.
You felt it.
I felt it.
You felt it.
Exactly.
And then you had to follow it and try and figure out how to keep doing it.
I just didn't stop. It became a passion, like an obsession. And it was through the years that I was so passionate about this place and about these things that people were not really looking at. Everybody was so overwhelmed with the sea, with the coastline, and all these places were just, not being looked at, and you start realizing that the desert is, for many people, is, wasteland, and, they throw their big couches out there, and it's a cultural thing, because it's, for some people it's like there's nothing, or some people just fear. emptiness, you know, and you know, I understand them because I felt it, and it's scary because you have not in the desert you have nothing to distract you, and then you have to face yourself.
That's profound.
There's no place
absolutely.
to go. When you're in the city or in another place, you have tons of things to distract. I think the desert is so. That's why it's so intense. It's, you know, like I've read that all these cultures, you know, most of the most important cultures are being settled in the desert. Religion. The most important religions have been settled in the desert, and I just felt that I belonged, and how you relate the abandonness of, you know, and many things to it, and being part of something, you know. And I think it was very natural from being a passive observer to an active, you know,
Participant.
Yeah. Because how much time can you spend in these places without getting concerned? You know, it's like there's a time where you can just be overwhelmed and do contemplation, but then you start the more profound you get to the place, the more you realize there were things that need to be done.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So I became aware of your work through the podcast that I did with Zach Plopper at West Wildcoast. So they do land conservation.
Yes.
And they were using some of your photographs in their work to show why these things needed to be preserved and to raise money. So at what point did your photography take that turn where you say, okay, I need to do something with these pictures and preserve what I'm looking at?
I think, like many things in life, it's a twist. Things just I knocked on a lot of doors, but nobody was really interested in seeing the desert and mountains. Everybody was interested. Tourism board and everyone was just, no, if it doesn't have a coastline, we don't care. You know? So I got this opportunity to publish through Sunbelt Publications in La Jolla a book which was co-partnered with them, and they got interested in it, and it got published. And although nobody really was caring a lot about the topic, they did, and that was in 2005. The book was called Oasis of Stone, and they enter a contest. It's called Book of the Year. It's Expo Book America. I'm sorry. It's a national event, and they always submitted all their publications and stuff. And for some reason, this book was selected. And won a silver award. So the book took the nature medal, the silver medal in the nature category. And that was very overwhelming because we never expected the book to make it there, They were very credible books. And so we made it, and they called me, they told me, guess what? This book just made a silver award in Expo Book America in New York City. So the book became very popular, and they were very happy. So it was by then that when this thing happened, then when I was here in La Paz, they all of a sudden they just look at it. When nobody really paid attention, it's like, oh, somebody said it was important, so we need to look at it.
Yeah, somebody else validates you.
Exactly.
And now you're important.
So honestly, I don't know exactly. I think it was a wonderful combination of narrative and images, and it was, you'll get to see it. And And then I got some attention. And Ezequiel Escurra, which was the provost for the San Diego Natural History Museum by then, he told me, I want to present this book. I do want to present it, and I love it, and he's a desert lover, and he's a bright ecologist, and he told me, we need to present this book. And he presented in the San Diego Natural History Museum. And then that's how, by the museum, that's when it got to all the environmental,
organizations
and people related to, because Ezequiel, which I am very grateful, as many, we all have very special people in our lives, because he's an incredible bright ecologist. Now he's director for UC Mexus in UC, and he was very supportive because he's a desert lover, and he has worked many years on coastal deserts, and he knows their value, and so he really pushed it. He says, no, we need to really help this guy, at least with his work. And then all of the people that were working there start approaching, like in the environmental organizations, that most of them were working with water, but some of them were starting to work with coastline. And it was also a transition even for environmental projects, because before environmental projects were focused on water, and now the vision is very
integrated.
Exactly. Yeah. It's switching to that because that's how it is. That's why it should be. So I think it was a coincidence that in that time there was all this through Ezequiel also. They were really pushing the value of ecoterrestrial, biodiversity along with coastal diversity. So that's when I had a room for a guy who was working with deserts, because nobody before was paying attention. It's like, okay, yeah, well, deserts, but we have beautiful coastline, and it's hard to fight that. It's not as charismatic. Right. Whales and orcas and all this marine wildlife.
It's a quieter place and a quieter story.
Exactly.
And you have to get people to actually change gears or change channels.
And it's easier to connect with marine. No, it's so how can you put attention into this dry land, where beauty is not really can be seen right away. You just need to be there and witness the miracle of life. But those things take harder, so that's why they're not as charismatic. People
subtle.
Don't want to risk themselves to see something like that.
It's much more subtle.
Well, now they do more. And all of the photographer friends that I've had, like Jack Takinga, these wonderful landscape photographers that I have the opportunity to work with and travel with, and desert photographers, they know that. When they were working to protect the Escalante, and all these beautiful desert monuments, they always struggled, how to put attention into something people consider a waste.
We can't wait to drive our old Land Cruiser down to Baja, and when we go with Baja Bound Insurance. Their website's fast and easy to use. Baja Bound Insurance, serving Mexico travelers since 1994. So we're back here at Harker, and I'm talking to the photographer, Miguel Ángel de la Cueva.
Yes.
Okay.
Sí, claro.
And you can find him on Instagram at, say it,
Miguel Ángel de la Cueva.
And he has beautiful photography, beautiful, stunningly beautiful photography. I spent 25 years as a photographer. I photograph people. I do not have the patience to do the work, to wait for the light, to be in the spot, to make the photos that you make. And that's why I'm sitting here with you right now to pay homage to
I'm very
you.
honored.
Yeah, no, so take it away. So when look at an Ansel Adams, an Edward Weston, a beautiful, stunning scene that somebody has spent a painstaking amount of time to be in the right place when there's the right light. How often do you find that moment versus like, great place, gonna have to come back next month, gonna have to come back again, gonna have to come back when the light's right, it's just not right. How often do you actually feel it in your bones like you got it? This is beautiful.
Oh, it's a very good question. It's very often that friends, people I know, just give me a call and tell me, come on, let's go and take a photograph. Like, what's your plan? Well, let's just go for a walk and then we'll be back in an hour. And I said, let's just go for a walk. And because most of my friends sometimes they expect, that we're just going to be pointing, shooting while we're walking. And they say, normally although you need to be prepared always for whatever shows up, it's about connecting. It's like with people. You can just not connect right away. It's very rare, for that to happen. You need to invest time, for that to happen. And I think, of course, my most memorable moments I've had here, and it's, although sometimes most of them they surprise me, it's part of a longer process. I think it's like luck. It's just not luck. You just have to be prepared.
Yeah, so I was just going to say some Brazilian friends of my grandfather that were very kind to me 30 years ago. The wise old grandfather said to me, "You must be prepared for luck when it arrives."
Yes.
And that's what you're talking about.
Yes, because sometimes I remember...
You put the work in to be lucky.
In life, that's how it is. We always have great opportunities. Sometimes we're just not ready for it. We don't see it. We were not prepared for it. And I think sometimes you need to learn from that, because I've blown tons of things like that, in many ways. And the same thing is with photography. I think when you realize that you just said something very interesting minutes ago about just not pushing too much, letting things happen, and if something is not happening, it's not happening. It's okay.
Let it come to you.
To be up, but I think that happens through the years. You learn how to be less apprehensive, with things, and with photography is the same. Because it can be very frustrating, and with more when you're working with subjects you cannot control. I mean, I'm not a wildlife photographer, but I know friends who are, and I'm always surprised, because working with unpredictable subjects, and
you said a wildlife photographer.
Yeah, but I've worked with people, and I've worked with landscapes, although they're not moving. Well, clouds move, and the sun moves, and the moon moves, but they are unpredictable, and the more you can do is just sit and wait for things to happen. If they don't happen, you return. And then if your return doesn't happen, it's okay. You just have to. I think I'm enjoying more and more the process, and not really preoccupied about if I'm really getting the shot. Because I've had situations,
not the destination.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've
Slow
had
Baja.
an example, and you have to be open to the unexpected. Once I was looking for this place in the central Baja California Peninsula, around Vizcaíno. And there's some rhyolite peaks called Santa Clara. There are 5 rhyolite peaks which are 600 meters tall in flat desert. It's amazing geological monument. But actually, I was looking for some blooming they were telling me was happening, And I was for 2 days, and I never found it, and I was very frustrated, and I was not even looking at the mountains because I was looking for the blooming. I was like this, the blooming. And then I just decided to camp because it was late.
For those who aren't sitting here with me, Miguel is just making the gesture of having the blinders on like a horse. So he's focused on the bloom, which isn't blooming enough, and he's missing out.
Yeah, I was.
Take your blinders
off. This is not what they told me was happening. So okay, and I spent already a day in the sun. I was very, very, very thirsty, and I said, okay, I was just frustrated, and I just decided to camp in this place. And it was a very windy and cold night. The next day, I woke up because I was freezing. It was 5, and then when I got off my tent, I noticed I could not see because it was all covered by fog. Nothing. And then I said, oh my God, I'm covered by fog. And I just sat there, and then I waited for sunrise, and I see these peaks starting to show through the fog. That's actually the cover of the book. And what I saw that morning, because the fog starting, to lift while it was warming up, but it was cold up, so it got trapped on the peaks. So it starts to rotate because it's trapped. So I had these clouds rotating very slowly in the peaks. And I had goosebumps. It was an amazing vision. I had goosebumps. Like I'd never seen anything like that. And I said, oh, you should take photographs. I was not even thinking about it. So, okay, I ran. I got the camera. I got the pictures. I got everything. But that day changed a lot of things because it was one of the best experiences I've had, and it was unexpected. I didn't even plan on being there, photograph these peaks, and I had the most amazing visual and sensorial experience I've had in my life. Cold, the vision, the movement. And I noticed that you need to be open for those things to happen, although you don't know what's going to happen. And I think one of the greatest things about nature and photographing nature is that it's unexpected.
But as we just said, you had to be ready for when the luck arrived.
And of course I ran, and I had the skills to make it happen. But that was only the technical thing that made it happen. But it was there.
So talk to me about, in this era, when everybody's looking down at their hand with their phone, and everybody's so busy doing nothing because they're looking at their hand and they're on social media, how do you make the time? How do you block out the time to get out and look for those moments? I'm asking you, how do you organize your working life? I mean, are you able to just get out and go? Do you have to wait for an assignment? How do you do it?
Well, things have changed a lot in the last years. Assignments, editorial assignments. It's almost like it's almost gone. I still get some, and I'm very lucky for that. But things are changing. Editorially speaking, it's very challenging because things are very focused on overwhelming events and spectacular stuff. Everyone wants spectacular things, fast and spectacular. And it's very hard to compete with that, and why am I telling you? Because it's very challenging as a photographer to have people, to attract people's attention. When I was a teenager, I could open a magazine like we did, National Geographic and others travel magazines, where you were just wow.
You're riveted.
You were dreaming about being in the place, and Even sometimes TV, you could see it. Now, it takes 2 seconds. You open a phone, you open Instagram, and you have millions of images, wonderful, beautiful images. How can you focus? It's very challenging. I mean, for all, well, not all generations, but at least for my generation and behind.
It's like popcorn. You just eat it. You don't think about it. You just consume.
The value of storytelling.
Swipe, swipe, swipe.
Now it's returning because we're locked. People are very avid. They want stories, but it's happening. But for the last years, it's very challenging to put attention into what it should be. You know, like the places, the people. You need to make things very. You need to think not only the way you do things, but how people look at things. Before, you could focus more on your work and make the story happen. An editor will help you to guide. But now you need to have way wider vision. You know, I've been with colleagues in big events, and I've had, photographers, like very conservative photographers, that tell me, I'm not taking a selfie of myself. I'm not taking a selfie. And the editor is telling, well, you should, because, that's what connects people with the photographer. But no, I'm there to take the photograph, and I'm there to make the story. I'm not there to make photographs of myself. And I've seen this culture shock. And now, the selfie of the photographer has 100 more views than the photograph that the photographer took. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about the story. You really have to make it very spectacular for people to look into the story, why the photographer was doing, what was the purpose of that assignment. No. It's very fast. And it's like slow Baja. No. How can you keep things slow again?
Tranquilo.
How? So, saying being brief, being brief, I think is the best example is what I do with my kids. I've always been an enemy of my kids being on the phone and being on TV. I don't have a television, and of course I cannot alienize them because their friends have the phones and they play the video games and it's their moment. But what I do is when they're here, I take them 4 days, no Wi-Fi. Even if they're mad at me, for 24 hours they won't speak to me, they won't talk to me, because I'm just taking them away from their devices. But the second day, they're playing. They're being nice to each other. They're playing, they're running, and they're in the beach and they're swimming. And they connect within 2 days. Third day, it's all. So when you see that, it's worth. It's worth trying, trying harder to make people look back at nature for what all the things that gives us. It's within us. So it's starting from one. It's very hard not to get trapped by the current, very strong current. My neck hurts. Oh, it's my phone.
Exactly.
I mean, as obvious as that, and I do try not to look at it too much. It's too much information. I think what really helped me to focus in my work, it was that I was very far from all my colleagues, all far from what everybody was doing. I didn't feel pressured if they were succeeding or not, if they were doing cool things or not. I think what really worked is that I really focused on what I wanted to do without really being aware of what was going on. And that's what is very challenging today. How can you just isolate yourself with so much information around? You know?
Yeah, well, as the food is arriving and distracting me, and I've definitely ordered too much, I'm going to ask you one last question. Maybe we'll just turn off the mics and have a little food. But Miguel, you're from Mexico, Cuernavaca, nearly Mexico City, very close to Mexico City. How would you explain Baja to my listeners, to fellow people from the mainland in Mexico, your fellow countrymen? How do you explain Baja? How do you explain the place? How do you explain the people?
I've always loved the words by Fernando Jordan, when they call it the other Mexico, el otro México, which is true. This is very different from any other place in Mexico. Very different. Although many people migrated from Sinaloa, Sonora, and from the other side of the Gulf of California, the roots, their story, even it's very different from the rest. This sense of island, being in an island, changes. I think it. Let me see. Find the right word. I think it's the best place to be where you can find the absence. The essence. I'm sorry. Of people, the essence of place, the essence of nature. It's still alive. You go into the mountains and you meet these ranchers, and their essence is so pure still. Although they're getting more people there, the cleanness in their eyes, and their smile, it's so primary. We forget about even things like that. Saying hello is very important for them. Now we can just walk in any other place and we don't even wave to each other. So the same thing with nature. Sitting in front of a place like this, like where we're sitting right now, with the water in front of us, makes you see things like for the first time. So I think the Baja California Peninsula, it's a wonderful place to recuperate what's the most important, or primary essence, to reconnect with ourselves as humans, as persons, to reconnect ourselves with our ground, with our, where we come from, before the cities, and I think it's a great place to be a better human being, because it gives you all this, it's hard not to. I think, yeah.
Miguel Ángel de la Cueva, before you go on, that was so profound, we're going to leave it right there. So tell us how people can be in touch with you or follow your photography. Where can people find you on the internet?
Well, you can follow me through my Instagram account, Miguel Ángel de la Cueva. Also,
that'll be in the show notes.
We didn't talk about this, but I've been working in the last 10 years in this conservation project on the Sierra La Giganta y Guadalupe ranges. Please visit Sierra La Giganta y Guadalupe. I will send through Slow Baja all their links so you can visit and know more about this wonderful project to create a new 1 million hectare Biosphere Reserve in the Baja California ranges. And we've been working on that for 10 years, and hopefully you join and help us and come along in this adventure.
Well, this will be the first of I'm sure, several podcasts with Miguel Ángel de la Cueva. We've got tacos in front of us, so we're going to sign off for now. and I'm delighted that you made some time for Slow Baja, and I look forward to spending more time with you.
Oh,
So
it's an honor, and I feel very honored for you guys to be here. I really enjoy and love what you do, and I wish there would be more people like you doing what you do, because you're very passionate about what you do, and I think that will have a great impact. I'm very honored to be with you guys having dinner here.
All right, well, thank you very much. Slow Baja's wardrobe is provided by Taylor Stitch. I was lucky enough to wear test some items on my 3,000-mile Baja XL trip. The vertical jacket, the California shirt, which is a beautiful flannel shirt. I call it the Baja California shirt. And some white oak, beautiful selvage denim jeans. Put all that stuff on to make me look good in Baja, and I never took it off. I was wearing that stuff for 10 days straight. That vertical jacket is a handsome, handsome jacket. In the truck, under the truck, at dinner. Taylor Stitch, clothes that are meant to wear in, not out. Folks, you made it this far. I got to ask you, please help us out. Rate it, review it if you're on iTunes. Share it with a friend. Go to slowbaja.com or Slow Baja on Instagram or Facebook and get some stickers, hats, t-shirts. Every little bit helps me put a gallon of gas in the old FJ40 or a taco in my belly. So please do what you can to help out. I really appreciate it.